5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I'm live. Okay, so welcome to one more evening of live training or live discussion, I will say, on this channel. And today my topic is very weird, you can think about, but it's a very important topic specifically for seniors. Most asked, that's a wrong text out there. The most asked architecture interview questions, so people who are seniors out here, who have like 10 years of experience, when they go out in the market and when they go and attend an interview, my focus in this session would be to talk about those questions. So first, before I start the session, please go ahead and put down on the chat, what kind of questions you have been asked as a senior technical architect. So when you go as a technical architect, what kind of questions have come to you? And definitely I'll be flashing some of my questions, which I know when I discuss with because a lot of my training which I do is in corporate. A lot of my students are seniors, right? So I do understand, what kind of questions actually come to them. So please go ahead and put down your questions, what is asked. But before I start this session, very quickly, let us talk about, some important points which I would like to really ponder upon. The first important thing is that this presentation, whatever I'm showing out here, it is not a shortcut. Remember that when you say that somebody is an architect, at the end of the day, he has an experience, right? He has 8 years or 10 years of experience. So that experience is definitely very important, right? So this presentation is more of preparation and polishing. So a lot of seniors out there, they are definitely very good, when it comes to technical expertise and so on. But when it comes to expressing themselves, when it comes to vocabularies, when it comes to giving out that polished answer, sometimes it falls apart. And when those answers falls apart, the other person thinks that I'm not sure that whether he has done any kind of architecting, right? So today this presentation is more focused upon polishing and preparing rather than telling you that this is what you have to do and so on, right? Because already I expect that you have worked as an architect, you have been writing design documents, you have been delivering projects and so on, right? The second point important to understand is there are no rules for architecture position. For example, when I say rules means, for instance, when you go as a junior developer, there are set of questions. They have set of expectations saying that you should know how to write joints, you should know how to write this code and so on, right? So there are set of questions. The questions are small, they are focused, right? When let's say you go as a project manager position also, things are very clear. You should know agile, you should know estimation, you should know people management. But when it comes to architecture interviews, right, what happens is the interview starts right from a team lead. So some senior software engineer will start interviewing you, asking you basic questions, and then you are interviewed again by the delivery manager must be, or the project manager, and then by the delivery manager, and then by the vice president, and then by everyone in the company, right? So there are huge expectations, when it comes to architecture positions, because there is no fixed rule saying that, because they expect everything from an architect. They expect that he should write a design document, he should be a part of the delivery, he should help out, when there is a technical issue, he should be a part of pre-sales. So that's why, the position just becomes multi-spanned, right? The third important point which I want to flash out here is vocabulary. Most of the people who go there as a senior, right, what I find is that their vocabulary is not polished. For example, if you ask them that, okay, what is an iterator pattern? They would say, okay, for each loop. That is a very short answer. That does not show your experience out, right? So, for example, if somebody asks you, okay, like, what is your architecture of your project? I've seen one line answer, like 3-layer architecture, 3-tier architecture. No, not one line. The answer should come out. It should be emphasized properly. You should actually discuss about what your actual architecture is, what kind of components are there, how do you visualize it and so on, right? So I think the vocabulary and presentation also matters over there. And yes, you should be good in your core technology. For example, if you say I am in .NET, right? I understand that a lot of people will say architect means in general. No, at least I personally feel that our architect cannot be a general architect. Either he is an architect who is a Java architect, or either he is a .NET architect, or either he is a PHP architect. Why? Because all of these languages have very special capabilities, right? they have a special ecosystem, they have a special stack. So the experience does matter, when it comes to technology. So your technology should be good. Like you shouldn't say that you don't know how to design a database. You shouldn't say that you don't know abstract classes, object-oriented programming. There is no reason for it. You have to know all that. And on the top of it, what people ask you is, have you written design documents? Do you know some of the design patterns which you have used in your project? Which architecture is good where? Estimation, process. They also want, like, that you should understand agile. You should understand some marketing and management term and so on, right? So this is some points which you can remember when it comes as an architect. And that's why a lot of people who go for interviews out there, they feel suddenly that people are asking me everything. Why? Because first, your salary package is very high, and second, now you are expected to do everything at this age, right? So that's why a lot of people find that getting into technical architect position is like tough, right? I can see some questions out here. First thing, let me welcome Gaurav, Atul, Narayan, Amit, everyone out there, Sandeep. So I can see some questions out here. Okay, factory versus abstract factory. Okay, so that question is one which is asked. Yes, when it comes to design pattern, design application. So that's again one more question. I'll take these questions once I cover my questions. I will take these questions as well, right? Right. Okay. Relevance as an architect. That's a good question. Difference between const and read only. So Amit, I'm not taking that question. So I will not take technical questions today. Must be we can have a .NET interview question preparation. In that we can take that question. Agile methodology. What is your role? How you organize, prioritize your work as an architect. Again, like Narayan sir, as I've said, they expect also the management part. So those kind of questions are very much expected. 3-tier. Sandeep, NG content, NG template, stored procedure. So these are there. As I've said that these are technical questions, and they are important. Must be we can take these questions into some other session. But let us today focus on the architect point of view. Performance related. Absolutely, Amit. Tell me, how did you performance tune your application, right? So what I would suggest is, when you are preparing for your interviews, right, some of these questions, are standard. And these standard questions, if we can really try to answer them in a proper way, right, probably you have won half of the battle, right? So here are some of the questions, which I have seen been asked across the industry, and these questions I will go through. The first question, which I always see as a technical architect, which I expect, from a senior, is that explain your architecture of your project. Now, please note that this question, a lot of people, they answer in like one-liners or two-liners, right? Must be, I can just put down, what kind of answers, people expect out here, right? So first thing is, don't answer that one line. Don't say like 3-layer architecture or 3-tier, right? For example, if you're using ASP.NET MVC, right, you can talk about saying that I started, we are using an MVC architecture, right? And it has a view. Must be, you can start with that. Start saying each one of those components. It has a controller, it has a model, right? And then talk about other things, because this, for example, must be in the, I'm sorry about that. This is the controller, right? A controller, you have a view and you have a model, right? Once you explain the basic architecture here, the basic block, saying that there is a view, there is a controller, the model, then go further, like, saying that, okay, also we have used repository pattern, right? We have used factory pattern for decoupling. We have used singleton pattern, for for global data sharing, right? Must be you have used some kind of a web API. So talk about, how you have done your security, like JWT token or what have you exactly used, right? So what I would suggest is that first definitely start with your basic layer, saying that it's a 3-layer architecture or it is an MVC architecture, right? But definitely emphasize on the other layers as well, saying that my data access layer was in repository. Then we had these factory classes around for object creation. The global data sharing was happening through a singleton pattern, the singleton object. The security was taken care by using JWT. Also, we had an audit trail. So when you actually explain this question, the answer out there, right? Explain on your architecture of a project. Please try to show your skill as an architect. Do not try to just give one-liner answer or two-liner answer, right? So that's the first question, which I see out there. Also, let me take some questions, from the chat also. Must be I can take some questions from the chat as well. So factory versus abstract factory. I can see that one thing out there, factory versus abstract factory. So I'll take this question out here. So what I'll do is I'll answer some of my questions, and also I will take up questions, which are asked on the chat right there below, right? Guys, today, if needed, I will do some demonstration, but I will not be into demonstrations today. I will be more into polishing the answers, more about expressing yourself, getting the right technical vocabulary. So I'm taking that factory versus abstract factory from the chat. But here it is. This is one more. The second question, which is around design pattern, very common. Talk about some design pattern you have used in a project, or which design pattern have you used in a project. What happens over here is that many people just jump to that singleton pattern. Don't do that, because singleton pattern is a very lame answer. It's all across it. Everyone says singleton pattern, right? So must be other than singleton pattern. You can talk about repository pattern, which is for data access layer. You can talk about unit of work, as someone said, factory pattern, absolutely, right? Template pattern, again, that is used a lot, right? So I would suggest that if you can just go through some design pattern training, or must be architecture training, at least the basic one, like how to write an UML, right? So I would suggest that go through the design patterns. I'm sure that as a developer you must have used some design pattern here and there, right? Like for example, it is not possible that after 8 or 9 years of coding you have not used design pattern. You are just not aware of it. So try to hunt, what that design pattern is. So I would suggest go through some design pattern lectures, wherever you can. For example, in Questpond we have this design pattern lectures out here, and then see that, okay, like, so I see adapter pattern, fine. So did I ever use in my project adapter pattern? If I've used, right, please express that in the interview. So first thing, avoid answering a singleton pattern, right? Do not go, with the sheep crowd out there, and try to name some pattern like factory pattern, or abstract factory pattern, or repository pattern, unit of work. Then you have adapter pattern, third party, always people use it, template pattern, right? And so many out there, right? So try to name those 3-4 patterns which you are really strong in, right? And second, very important, whenever you are naming those patterns, right, name only those patterns which you are good in. Like for example, if you say factory pattern, and if he cross questions you about factory pattern, you should be able to answer it. So please talk about your project experience, where you have used this design pattern. Why did you think that this design pattern was important, right? So again, over here I have seen that this is a very common question. Which design pattern have you used in your project? And what people do out there is, they try to start with singleton. Must be you can start with some of your own patterns out here. I will take one question from the chat. One question which comes for architects is factory versus abstract factory, right? This answer I cannot really give it right away here in this small 1 hour, but I would like to just focus on this, what this factory versus abstract factory is. Factory pattern, first thing, both like factory pattern and abstract factory pattern, what they do is that they centralize the new keyword. Look at my answers, guys. Look at the way my answers are polished. Factory pattern, what it does is it helps you to centralize the object creation process, and by doing so it decouples the concrete classes from your clients, and with that you have a better architecture, right? Now in factory pattern, what happens is, in factory pattern uses inheritance for object creation, right? So for example, if you say I want to go and create, let us say, an object called as let us say a sales object, assume. So you will say, okay, sales object, and you say that this sales object has a discount of 10%, and then a something, right? So what he will do in a factory pattern, he will use inheritance. He will say, okay, like for this sales we will use this object to create, must be a sales class, we will need a discount class, and we will need something else. So here factory pattern uses inheritance for object creation, right? In case of abstract factory pattern actually stands on the top of factory patterns. So basically, let us say you have factory pattern here which does some object creation. There is factory pattern 2 and there is factory pattern 3. So abstract factory pattern, what it does is it actually goes and sits on the top of this and makes your object creation more easy. So in other words, factory pattern uses inheritance, while abstract factory pattern actually sits on the top of the factory patterns and gives them a logical grouping. Now this is a very, very simple answer I've tried to put out here. I would really suggest that please go and watch my factory pattern video out here. If people who are from Questpond out here, you can go and watch this video. You can see you can see this video out here. I've explained everything about factory pattern and abstract factory pattern, right? Because it is not so easy to understand it, right? But at the end of the day, in the interview, one is that you have to go through all this, you have to write a code, you have to understand it. There is no excuse for that hard work. But second, how do you put all this into a simplified manner, right? So I would suggest that please go through this 1.5 hours of video which I've dedicated only to factory and abstract factory. But the answer in the interview should be something like this. Factory pattern helps you to centralize the object creation. So all the new keywords gets centralized into a central place. Factory pattern uses inheritance to define the final object, while abstract factory pattern sits on the top of factory pattern and uses the factory pattern to create the objects, right? Now definitely after this, the interviewer is going to go bonkers. He's going to go and going to go and start drawing diagrams on the paper, right? And saying that, okay, now let's go more into the code. And at that time, you definitely need to know more details about that pattern, right? So I would suggest that prepare smartly, prepare like a wolf. Remember that it is too much to prepare out there, right? So prepare like a wolf. So I would say that, take up small topics, take up the topics which are most asked out there, prepare them very well and come out with a nice vocabulary, right? So that's the answer for factory pattern and abstract factory pattern. Let us take the next thing, repository pattern and unit of work. Okay. Before I go to repository pattern and unit of work, let me check up, some of, the chats out there. Let me start from down. There is a question from Adesh here. So is architecture interview just about design patterns? No. So Adesh, as I've already said in the previous part of the video, I don't know if you're there from the first part of the training. In architecture, they will ask you right from your .NET fundamentals. If you're a .NET guy, right from SQL writing, they will ask you till the UML. They will go to Docker. They will go to DevOps. They will go to everything. That's why I've said that you need a preparation. You can't go on the fly and start preparing out there. It is not possible, right? Okay, that's a good question out there from Shekhar. Different type of design documents. So I'll take that question as well out here. So some questions I'll be taking from the chat, right? And also some questions which I'll be taking from here. So guys, this is one more question, the third question which is asked around repository and unit of work, right? Again, I would suggest you should go through the repository pattern. You should go through unit of work. You should know the basic code shell. What is the use of it, right? But while explaining the repository pattern, this is what my answer is, right? So repository pattern, it acts like a layer between your data access layer or between your RDBMS and between your model. So if you look at the repository pattern, so you have your your data layer out here, right? So basically you have your so if you look at repository pattern, basically you have your model here and you have your tables and fields out here, right? So what this repository pattern does is it actually acts like a middleman in between, and a lot of common code goes into repository pattern. For example, so this is your model, this is your repository, right? Now at the back you can have a table, you can add it to a file, you can add it to SQL Server, right? So repository pattern, the first thing is that it acts like a middle layer out here where you can easily switch between the data sources, the type of data source. You can switch from Oracle to something like MySQL, or must be from MySQL to a simple file, right? So first thing, what repository pattern really provides a layer between a model and the data sources, right? It acts like a mediator. Look at my words out there, mediator. So repository pattern, you can think about it's a mediator layer which helps to communicate between the model objects and your data sources, right? Second, this repository pattern also has a lot of common code out here. Common code means, for example, let us say you want to add the objects in memory. If you see a lot of code out there today, you are adding in memory, then you are validating, right? So all that common code like validating and everything can come into repository. Transactions can come into repository, right? So a lot of common code, rather than getting scattered everywhere, it comes into repository. The second very much pertinent question which goes with repository is unit of work. What is the use of unit of work? Unit of work helps you to do transactions, right? Unit means either everything goes in everything gets saved or everything gets rolled back, right? So repository pattern is nothing but it is a mediator, and unit of work helps repository pattern to do transactions. It helps to do ACID principles, atomicity and consistency and all that, durability and so on, right? Unit of work cannot exist without repository pattern. Unit of work, because it's a part of repository pattern, right? So again, this is one more question which comes. And second, they do one of the questions which I again see very connected to this is that if you use entity framework, do you need repository pattern or not? Again, a very kind of a confusing question which is put across by seniors. So if you are using repository pattern and if you are using entity framework, do you still need repository, right? So that's one more question, but that is, we can take it sometime later. This is a good question. What are the different type of design documents? Now, definitely, like we have two types, at least for my understanding. One is this, what you call your lower level design and the higher level design, right? Now, well, it is, frankly, if you ask me personally, a design document is a design document. Really, there is, for me, like an HLD and LLD are just phases of the design document, right? So yes, but in the industry you will see that lot of people use this vocabulary HLD. HLD means they will just start from the 30,000 feet level. They will say that okay, we will have this class, but in that class what are the attributes, or what exactly is the one-to-many relationship, how exactly are the fields, we will define in LLD. So but for me, I find that if you create two documents like HLD and LLD, it becomes very difficult to sync up, right? So when you are answering such kind of questions, yes, first tell them that, sir, I understand that there is an HLD document and there is an LLD document, and also talk about the pain of synchronization. For example, when I go as an architect in the company, I try to also specify the pain point. So I'll say that okay, I use LLD for this and then I use HLD for this, but what I found is that it is better to just have one document, everything in that, right? Because for me, both of these are like phases. So when your answer starts becoming natural, when your answer starts reflecting your experience, then it goes into a different tone. But definitely this is the answer for that. One is the LLD document and one is the HLD document. Okay, let me go back again to the chats out there. I had all this question about repository, unit of work, EF and all flopped. Okay. So Tintu we can prepare on your answers. You can sometimes give me a mock interview and so on. Let me look at some other questions. Right. This video will be there on this channel, so don't worry about it. DDD, yeah, there are questions around DDD, but it's very difficult, like, frankly, this is my honest opinion. A lot of architect interviews which happens out there in the industry, they are really just plastic. Like, if you ask me that how to get a good architect, you should talk about his experience. You should talk about his problem solving capabilities. But it is a very sad part. In the industry, people ask questions, factory pattern, abstract factory pattern. They ask about UML. Now at that time, who will remember the UML diagrams? But this is what they ask, right? So I would say go prepared. But if you want to really find an architect, you should give him a problem. You should tell him that draw a class diagram. Show me that what you did when you had this problem. How did you tackle this issue, right? Try to get the real crux from him. But if you see a lot of those interviews out there, they ask plastic questions. So at least be ready with the plastic questions. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Fine. So let's go to the above. Security at architect level. Yes, that's again one of the. Okay, let me see what questions I can take. Okay, I'll go back to the questions again. Let me take up the other question from here. Yeah, this one again nowadays has become a fad, like microservices, Docker, DevOps and Kubernetes. I don't know what the hell is happening out there in the architect interview era. Everybody just says comma this, right? So here is my thought on that. Guys, be prepared at least to say something about this Docker, DevOps or Kubernetes, something. For example, if you're a Questpond member, I would suggest to go through the Docker videos and see that how to create a Docker, how to host a .NET Core application inside it, how to go ahead and maintain that. Even if you at least know about it, you can say in the interview that I know about it, because nowadays it has become like compulsory to use microservices. I don't know what is happening out there. Microservices has its own place, right? But people ask about it. So now for microservices, remember, microservices is nothing but, wherein you create applications in a standalone manner or in a self-contained manner. So for example, let us say that you have a big application out there which has inventory, which has accounting, which has inventory, payroll, right? Now what you do normally, you go ahead and you create one big project. So in microservices, what we do is that, so very quickly, let me go and flash my screen out here. Must be I can just talk about how to answer the question on microservices. So microservices, first is guys just go and prepare on the concepts. Definitely look at a simple example of a Docker. Try to host an .NET Core into Docker, right? But here it is a basic concept about microservices. Let us say you have an application out there, and that application is an ERP, assume. So it will have inventory, it will have payroll, it will have accounting, right? So what do you do now? You go ahead and you create one big single project. This is termed as a monolith architecture, and you have one big database. Now what is the problem with such kind of architecture, right? The problem here is that, first, if I go and change the inventory application, right, I have to bring down the database, I have to go and make some changes, and it is very much possible that even though inventory is not related to payroll, but because of some DLL or some field which is altering out there, payroll can be affected, accounting can be affected, right? That is one. And second is, let us say if two developers want to work, one developer wants to work into inventory and another developer wants to work on payroll. It is difficult, why? Because they are one big solution file, one big CSproj file must be, right? It becomes very difficult to integrate this code out here. So in microservices, what we do is that we say, okay, we will have a separate inventory project with a separate database in it. Then we will have a separate payroll project with a separate database in it, and we will communicate via, REST or must be whatever, service-oriented architecture like WCF or something, right? So here, there is actually a physical decoupling, right? And what you do is that when you go and you host this application, you host into something called as Docker, right? A container actually. So in Docker, what happens is you will say that this is one container in the same machine, because you cannot now have separate machines for them, right? So Docker, what it does is it creates separate instances of your application, and it says, okay, here is inventory and here is payroll, all running in the same box, right? So this is what is microservices. So in the interview, right, you should be able to explain this. You should be able to explain that why monolith is good as well as bad. For example, it is not that everybody has to do microservices. For example, you have a two people team. A two people team don't have to do microservices. You can talk with each other. You are sitting next door, right? You don't have to really, you are not working parallelly, must be, right? Microservices is definitely good, where you have 50 developers working, 5 working on that, 4 working on that. His work should not affect him, right? Parallel development, right? And so these are the two things, which you should be able to explain. And second, they do expect that you should know Docker, you should know a bit of Kubernetes, because all of this actually goes into Circle. You should know a bit of DevOps as well, right? At least the fundamental part you should be aware of. So that's again one of the questions which keeps coming up. Okay, let me see some questions from here. Factory design pattern. So actually, Satish, I have answered. Factory design pattern uses inheritance. So that I have already answered. Let me see what questions I can take from here. Okay, architecture design versus architecture style. Okay, I don't know. People ask these questions. It would be great to see that kind of questions. I'm not sure really. But let me answer that. Architecture design versus architecture style. I don't know who has asked that question, but it's a very good question. Let me take this question. Some questions, guys, I'm taking from the chat. Some questions I'm taking from my PowerPoint out here. Please, I would really suggest that if possible, go to Questpond, and Questpond has this awesome 2 sections out here. One is the learn design pattern. Here I have explained design pattern with the project. Also UML. class diagram, sequence diagram, some basic part of it, use cases, how do you write, process, how do you do estimation, at least you should know function points, at least you should be able to speak and say that yes, when time comes I can do it, right? So I would suggest that please go through all of these videos out here, which are extensive, 20 hours of videos, and every pattern I have really gone into like detail, like how you saw factory pattern, 1 and 1.5 hours only for factory and abstract factory. Second, like builder pattern, again, like 1 hour only for that, right? So that that solidifies your thing. Here it is, guys. That's a good question. Architecture design versus architecture style. I think this I will stress more on the vocabulary part, polishness part. See, remember, you are a senior person. A senior person, when he speaks on the stage or when he is speaking around, his vocabulary should not be confusing. He should not say model is a business layer and business layer is a data access layer. He cannot just jumble up his vocabulary. His vocabulary should be clean, or else the team starts looking him from a different eyes, right? So basically his vocabulary should be impressive. It should be to the point. Now this is again one more point which I found. So we have design patterns, and then we have architecture patterns, and we have architecture style. This is again like some which you should remember. In design pattern, we know the code. We know the pseudo code at least. Pseudo code means if somebody says how to write a singleton pattern, or let's say somebody says how to write a iterator pattern, you know that there will be some pseudo code like I enumerable, for each operator, and so on, right? In architecture pattern, you just know the block diagram like controller and then view and then a model. That's it. In architecture style, you have it's only principles. Like REST is architecture style, which follows HTTP must be, right? Or service oriented is architecture style where we exchange data using XML, right? So here we have the block diagrams, but here we have only the principles, single liners, one liners, what exactly that means, right? So REST is architecture style, SOA is architecture style, MVC is an architecture pattern, MVVM is an architecture pattern, factory is a design pattern, singleton is a design pattern. So please don't confuse yourself. So try to, whenever you are answering the questions in the interview, see that your vocabulary is going in sync as well, right? Okay, so that's one part. Okay, let's go back to studio. Okay, let's see the other question, dependency injection. Okay, this is again one more question which comes around dependency injection and inversion of control. Now, what is the interviewer expecting from you? First thing, he expects a very sweet one-liner of dependency injection. Remember, anything like repository pattern, factory pattern, or whatever, right, microservices, he expects 1 or 2 sweet lines first. Those lines should not be confusing. So for example, in dependency injection, what we do is that whatever are the dependent objects, rather than they getting created inside the class, they are injected from outside, right? So in other words, very quickly, so just for clarification, today I'm not going to go and write a lot of code out here, but still, like, so let's say this is class customer out here, right? And this customer has discount, right? So rather than going and saying like this, discount X is equal to new discount, like rather than doing like this, right? What people do is they inject it via the constructor must be, or via somewhere else. So customer I discount D. So in dependency injection, the dependent object of the class are injected rather than created internally. So if you see out here, over here, this is avoided. This new keyword is not done. Somebody else from outside, now that somebody else can be a Unity application block, it can be anyone, right? He goes and he injects object here saying that let's inject now new weekday discount or new discount one, right? So somebody from outside injects it. Now what is the goal of this? Why, what happens, when somebody is injecting the object from outside? If you look at this customer out here, he's only pointing towards I discount. He does not know now this I discount over here can have weekday discount, weekend discount. It can have an holiday discount. It can have some super discount. It can have something, right? So he if when you go and add a one more discount type here, you don't want this customer should change. So the whole goal of dependency injection is, the benefit of dependency injection is that if you add a new type of class, your main class does not have to change. The class who is consuming that interface does not have to change, right? So by using dependency injection, you have a nice decoupling layer out there. So first thing, what is dependency injection? Dependency injection is nothing but where the dependent objects are injected from the constructor or from a property or wherever, right? But it is not created internally like this. The new keyword is completely removed. And what is the benefit of it? The benefit is decoupling. When you add a new type, a new concrete type over, down the I discount, the customer class does not have to change. And this is also, a lot of people also have a very connected question with this inversion of control, right? If you see now, this inversion of control is already happening. What is inversion of control? Very quickly, inversion of control means, first thing, it is not a technical word. Please note this, IOC. Remember, a lot of these architecture jargons out there are just jargons. So when you get a jargon question, please answer in a jargon manner, right? For example, inversion of control, what it means is that anything which is unnecessary in a class, which he should not do, should be inverted to someone else. For example, like my work is teaching, but I don't want to get into management, right? So I will invert my work to someone else and someone else will handle it, right? So inversion of control is nothing but it is a principle. That's the right word to use. It's a principle, wherein we invert this object creation, this new keyword, we invert it to someone else, like the Unity application block, or nowadays, inside MVC we have DI, and that guy goes and injects it. So inversion of control means invert your unnecessary work and unnecessary control to someone else, and you focus on that work. It means the class should do only his thing. If there is something else which has to be done, do it, right? So that's what is inversion of control, right? So again, guys, please answer in a polished way, answer in a polished manner. When you're answering it, show your knowledge, express your knowledge out. Okay. This is one more question which comes in, solid principles. I don't know why people ask this, but they ask it, right? Right. So we'll come to the solid principles later on. Let me see some questions out there. Let me go back. Okay, so I can see a lot of technical questions. Guys, today I'm not taking technical questions. For example, I'm not taking contravariance. I'm not taking MVC core questions. I'm not taking pipes. Umapati, I can see question on pipes. Developer questions today I'm not taking. I can have a separate session again like Angular interview questions where I can just write, or must be we can have .NET core questions. We'll just take .NET. Today it's more of, okay, let me see. Impure pipes. So today no impure pipes. Okay, continuous integration, continuous, yeah, okay, let me see what questions I can. Yeah, too many questions out there. Must be I'll go back to my questions. Solid principles. Again, like one of those questions which is asked out there, I can just go and switch to my whiteboard. Don't go unprepared. So questions like solid out there, let me, in case of first, don't try to by heart anything, it does not make sense, right? So first is your single responsibility principle, then is your open close principle, LISCO, right? Then you have the interface segment, and then you have your dependency inversion, right? So you can see that is what is solid out here, right? Now, first important thing is, please prepare your one-liner, right? You can go through my videos, you can see the complete demonstration of code, right? Like example S for single responsibility principle means one class should do only one thing at a time. Look at my answer. It is very crisp and clear. For example, if you have a class customer, it should do only customer activities like customer code, customer name, validations, but it should not do things like logging. It should not go and do things like REST, or it should not go and do data access layer activity. That should be done by repository must be. So repository will do his work, the customer will do his work, accounting classes will do his work. So that's what exactly is single responsibility principles, right? And how did, like one of the people, a lot of people ask that, how did you follow solid principles? Well, while designing, I designed a class customer separately, I designed a class repository separately, right? Open close principle again, when you have any code out there, like for example, if you have a class out there and this class is used in 1,000 places, assume, right? There, I always see that whenever people are coding or whenever there is something live into production, a lot of people tell me that don't touch that code. You can extend that code, because if you touch that code, everything stops working, right? So here also, like the same thing, what is OCP is open close principles, where we say that if a in a lot of places, and if you go and change that class, it will be problematic. All of these, if there are bugs, everyone will get affected. So what you should do is you should not change in this class, but you should extend it. So extend the class and add your new functionality out here and give it to your client who wants it. The other people are still referencing the old code, and they will still be running safely, and they will not have the bugs which you have, right? So open close principle means if there is an existing code out there which has been consumed in 1,000 places, don't try to fiddle around with it, right? In Hindi we say chalta hua code hai, haath mat lagao. That's what the thing I've seen in the industry, right? Extend it. LISCO principle. This is somewhere the developers start fumbling. First two everybody knows, solid principle and OCP, like they just go blasted on the interview, like open close and all. But as it comes to L, right, and then it comes to I, people are confused, right? So LISCO principle, what it says is, so let me go to LISCO out here. LISCO, again, first crisp answer. First is your one-liner. In your mind, you should have that one-liner. So LISCO says that a child class should be able to substitute his parent class easily. A parent class should be able to substitute his child class easily without any side effects. Means what? For example, now, assume that you have a class out here. Means your parent class should be able to point towards the child class, which is definitely it happens by polymorphism, but it should run without any issues. There should not be any side effects, right? So for example, now let us say we have a parent class here called as customer, assume, right? And it has calculate discount, right? Discount calculation. It has a method here which does discount calculation. Now you go here and you say, okay, class lead, and you inherit from this customer class. So you get all the properties of the customer, like customer name and address, and you are happy, but you also get calculate discount. Now you are confused. A lead is a person who does not buy anything from a shop, and then you have this method here called as calculate discount. So what is happening now? You have a child class who has a behavior which he does not know what to do with. So when the customer class will point towards the lead class on runtime by polymorphism, he is not sure what is expected in the calculate discount. So what people will do, they will throw a new exception here. What do you say that not implemented? Somebody will sweetly bypass it, right? So LISCO principle is more of a design problem, wherein you inherited from the parent class, but now suddenly you want to subtract those methods, and now you are stuck. Why? Because the project is running in production and you can't do anything on of this. So it's more of a problem which happens in the design phase, wherein something looks like a duck. So if you go and see LISCO out there, if you look at the LISCO, what do you call the LISCO? If you go out there and Google about LISCO, if you go and just go to images, you can see this favorite image out here, this LISCO. It says that looks like a duck. It quacks, but it has battery, right? So that look like a customer. It has a name like a customer. It has an address like a customer, but damn, he does not have discount. He does not have sales. He is just an inquiry customer, right? So LISCO principle is comes into picture because of understanding of the requirement, right? So again, like try to express your answer in a general way. Try to express your answer in such a way that the interviewer feels that you are conversing with him. Remember, at a senior level, when an interview changes into a conversation, you have the job. I am again repeating this thing. When an interview at a senior level, not even at a senior level, any interview out there, when it becomes a conversation, when it becomes, I'll not say debate, don't go into a debate, because these kind of, at the higher level, at 10 years of experience, that ego and debate is there. But when it becomes a very sweet and a fruitful conversation, right, you have the job, right? So try to answer in depth, have the examples beforehand. When you explain, when you argue, you have strong examples, strong code which you can demonstrate, and please carry a paper and pen. I know that you are a senior, you don't want to do that, but carry it. If you're serious about a job, if you're serious about getting 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs monthly, please carry a paper and a pen. Please go well dressed. Please have a vocabulary right? So that is the L part of it, right? And then now we have the I part, right? So the other ones I will not cover, guys. The I and D must be, you can email me. I can talk about the other parts also, right? So here it is. How do I now answer solid? Solid is nothing but it is an acronym. Look at my definition. Acronym. Acronym means it is a 4-letter word. It's a 4-letter word, which basically talks about. Sorry, it's a 5-letter word. I'm sorry. It's a 5-letter acronym which talks about 5 things: single responsibility principle, open close principle, and then you have the LISCO, and then you have the interface segregation and dependency inversion and so on, right? So first go ahead and talk about that it's an acronym. Then in case, if you want to give them one-liners, you can just give them one-liners, and then when he enters into a debate with you or into a conversation with you, have solid examples with you, like for example, customer and lead, right? Okay, let's go back. Okay, let's see some questions. Let me take some questions which I can take from there. Okay. Contra variance I'm not taking today. Mediator with CQRS. Mediator pattern with CQRS. Why does CQRS need a mediator pattern? I'm not sure. I'll just talk about the CQRS pattern. Nowadays, CQRS patterns are. So from the chat, I'm taking CQRS pattern. Remember, this architect interviews is not about design pattern. It is about a culmination of process, technology, DevOps. So it's about a lot of things. I don't know why mediator pattern is asked with CQRS. I need to really, mediator pattern is everywhere. But let me talk about CQRS pattern. CQRS, again, the name is big. Must be I can Google and I can show you something better out here. So if you look at CQRS, let me not draw any diagrams for now. I can take up this diagram from Martin Fowler website. Okay. What CQRS says. And if you see, if you remember my first question which was asked, like which design pattern have you used in a project? I can bet that you must have used CQRS in some or other way. Not exactly like CQRS, but you must have used a small flavor of it. In CQRS, what it does is, the CQRS stands for Command Query Segregation Principle. So CQRS, Command Query Separation, right? CQRS, yes, So here it is, you can see here what it says. This is your database out here and this is a UI. When you actually go and do an insert, update and delete, that is called as a command, right? You should have a class model, for example, class customer or class supplier, right? But when you go and query, you should not use the same class which you use for insert, update and delete. For a read model, for query model, you should have different type of class. Must be in a query model, you will have a light DTO with only set and get. There will be no validations, right? So what command query segregation says is that your command classes and your query classes, should be different. That's what the principle says, right? So a lot of people who have already created DTO, some people create those reporting classes. So you will always find, oh, here is an accounting class with all that one to many, but here is a flat class, which is just having set and get properties, nothing. It just hit a stored procedure and it just fills, right? So that is what is CQRS. I'm not sure that mediator thing, why the mediator pattern can be there inside this, but it's not something which we need to say explicitly, right? So in short, CQRS is something like this. So CQRS says, for example, here it is, class customer. This has lots of methods out here like validate, it has check, right? But a class, this is the command class, right? But a class reporting or a class query class of customer, will have just probably the name, that's it, with a set and a get. All these things are not needed out there, right? Command query segregation principle, right? So I've just taken that question so that, okay. Performance tuning, I think I'll take this thing out here. This again a question which comes up, for seniors, saying that how did you performance tune your SQL server? If you had a problem, how did you hunt a problem? If your .NET application was running slow or a Java application was running slow, what did you go about doing it, right? Please keep ready first 3 common tips in your head. For example, if somebody says, okay, so you found that your SQL server is going slow, what did you do? Don't go into something else saying that I started seeing the SQL plan. It's a plastic answer, right? So at least say that, okay, like, so when you say SQL server is slow, I think the first thing I will check is the indexes, cluster indexes and non-cluster indexes. Answer those tips or answer those steps which are very common for the industry. Don't try to answer something like, which is saying that I will go and do cache tuning. That will be something, must be the 100th step, right? So for example, SQL server performance tuning, first is the indexes. Second one is then I will see the query. If the indexes are good at place, right, I will see fragmentation. So some of the common things, first take into account. So keep, like, again, this is a section, I will not go into it now, must be, we can have performance tuning of 1 hour, sometimes later as a separate lecture. And the last point which I want to stress is that non-technical, I'll not say non-technical things, but management things. You should know what is agile. You should know all that product backlog. You should be able to answer those things. You should talk about sprints, right? How did you tailor your agile and so on. So agile scrum is a must and must, right? Estimation. You have done WBS estimation. How did you come out with the man days? Because normally architects are also given work of pre-sales, right? So how did you come out with man days and everything, right? So these are, some of the questions, which I wanted to emphasize in today's training. So let me go back now. Let me go back to the chat out there and let us see that what kind of questions are out there. System design, today I'm not taking the question. I can see system design. Okay. Best practices for code quality. Yes, absolutely. Aditya More has best practices for code quality. Now here also you should keep some answer ready. I will not tell the answer now, but I'm saying keep a good answer ready. For example, did you do a peer review? What was your coding standard? At least know that Pascal and Camel case, right? See, I would suggest, one is like, for example, if English is your second language, right? You should be prepared with the words and the sentences. Later on, when he asks you something in detail, where to click and where to do that you already know as a senior. You have been working 10 years in the industry, right? For example, this one here, best practice for code quality. You should try to see that in the organization, what did you do exactly? Did you do a code review? Did you have a document which was checked in, where developers were following it? Did you do some kind of a training for the developers saying that this is how our class naming convention is? This is what we should not do in a project, right? What was the checklist? 3-4 points from the checklist, right? Okay, so I can see a lot of questions out there, and I understand that it is very, very difficult to really summarize everything over here in this 1 hour, right? But I hope that in this 1 hour you must have at least got a broader idea of how to prepare for architecture interviews. Even if from this 1 hour, even if this goes into your mind that I have to prepare for interviews, however good I am, right? That is also more than enough. A lot of people go unprepared. They think that they know the answer. They think that they are king in their company. They have delivered big projects, but when they go before the interviewer, they fumble. So go prepared. Your resume should be prepared. Your resume should talk about what you know the best, right? So I would suggest that with all that hard work you have done in this 10 years or 8 years, right? Please have a preparation period as well, like 10 days, 15 days around your resume. And remember that whatever questions I have taken out here are in general. I always feel that every resume is different. Every person is different. The question asked to that person will be different. So it is not possible to have a general interview preparation, right? So your resume is your strong point and your weak point as well. For example, if you have a resume out there which says DevOps, Docker, this, think about the number of questions you will get. So if you are good in factory pattern, say that implemented factory pattern and abstract factory. Instigate the interviewer to ask you questions, bring him into your area, right? And try to see that you impress him, right? So remember that even interview giving is a skill. resume making is a skill. Once you understand that, then your experience plus your speaking skills plus your vocabulary plus your resume, this all makes sense, and I'm sure that you will win out there, right? So thank you very much, guys. I want to bring an end to this training out here, but very quickly I would really request everyone, if you can go and if you can share this video out there. It takes a lot of hard work for us to come online for 1 hour and speak, right? And please, if possible, visit my website here, questpond.com. I have recorded like design pattern videos, UML videos, architecture videos out here. Go ahead and have a look at those videos. Definitely, just interview preparation won't do, right? You should also know how to go and know the actual code and what exactly it is, right? So I would suggest, please share this live training. I am available on Twitter, right? You can search my name, Shiv Prasad Koirala. I am available on LinkedIn, Shiv Prasad Koirala Questpond. You can search any one of these keywords and please tag me, right? And if I like your tweet, for example, if you tag me in LinkedIn and if you say like, I like this session, and if you say something very specific about this session, which I will like, I will give you some subscription for free, right? You can access my subscription for free for some days. But let me see that who is the winner of the Twitter out there. Or so you can tweet on LinkedIn, you can tweet on my Twitter, or you can tweet. Also, you can tag me on Facebook, right? So go ahead, take this video out here and please tag me. And thank you very much to come to this session. I know that I didn't take a lot of questions from here. For example, I missed out the UML questions and so on, right? But I feel that overall, it would have helped you to get a broader aspect of how architecture preparations are done. So guys, before we end the session, please tell me that what is the next session you would like to look at? Because I and my team, we are working continuously to see that we bring this 1 hour of interactive session, which can be code based, which can be preparation based, we can talk about a specific topic also. If I know the topic, I can really talk about that topic as well. We can discuss. So let me know that what is the next session we can do here. For example, we can talk about async versus threading. We can talk about UML, right? Something 1 hour we can do. Definitely, if you want an extensive training, like today I have an extensive training on MVC JWT token. So today from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. I am doing how to implement JWT token in MVC core, right? AWS, microservices. A lot of people are saying microservices. Fine. Yeah, Manish sir, please send me that. I can see that. Angular interview questions we have already done. Did we do Angular interview questions? I think we did, isn't it? Yes, I think we did. Please check this, Chetan. In this, we have microservices. I can see microservices. Okay. And parallel. Okay, guys. So microservices must be Questpond. Please, we can take the microservices stuff out there on our YouTube. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks a lot. Be safe, be confined, but at the same time, be billable. You should be billable also, right? So thank you and happy learning.